So I'm here with the man, JDM himself. Grateful that he was able to come on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Jam with us for a little bit.
Yes, sir. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we caught up.
It has.
So.
I haven't seen you since, it was 2021 probably.
Yeah, 2020.
Or maybe even 2020.
Yeah, something like that.
Before the pandemic. Did you ever come out to the house at the lake?
No, I didn't. I just saw it all over your
So yeah, it's
social.
been since 2020. Shit.
It's been a while, bro.
That's
time
wild.
Goes. Yeah, time goes for.
Yeah, it's been kind of a wild couple years.
Yeah.
To be honest, yeah.
There's actually some questions I wanted to ask you. I don't know if I remember them off the top, but you're in the credit business, trade line business. I saw you post something on your story about like there's a lot of defaults coming up.
Yeah.
And I've noticed like I don't know if we're in a recession or whatever, but I don't think anybody's talking about it, but myself and a lot of other like businesses that I've worked with have felt the pressure.
Yeah.
What are your kind of like thoughts on that?
I think we definitely are in a recession from like an inflation standpoint because cost of goods are just so expensive now.
Right.
So cost of living goes up, cost of goods go up. You know,
Right.
that creates an environment where you're having to spend more for the same quality of life.
100%.
So in that regard, that has a lot of recession qualities to it.
Right.
Maybe they manifest a little differently, but you know, they kind of look similar on paper. They feel similar from a day-to-day perspective.
But no one's talking about it, bro. Like no one's really talking
Well, it's
about
because it's an election year.
that too.
And
well,
it's like, you know, they're trying to kind of like, you know, the media obviously, you know, controls our brains, you know, to some degree, all of us, even the ones that, you know, even though we try to kind of stay objective or deconditioned and unbiased, right? So they don't, you know, they're not talking about it because they don't want to. They don't want people to talk about it.
Right. There's a lot of clues though. Like so my buddy I grew up with, nice neighborhood, like Cheyenne 215. His parents lived there since like 2002. 4 or 5 houses on the market. My in-laws, they just moved to Japan. In their neighborhood in the lakes, like 4 or 5 houses up for sale. My buddy's about to buy like this $1.6 million house, like outside of the ridges. I don't know where it's at, but 4 or 5 houses up for sale, right? There's a lot that I think that's not probably a coincidence, right? There's got to be some level of.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a seller's market because of the interest rate issue, right? So that's the other problem is that a lot of people don't understand basic, you know, economics, and they don't understand, you know, you're not marrying your interest rate, you're just dating it, right? And you can always, you know, there's ways to kind of mitigate, you know, and leverage in these types of environments from a buying perspective. But a lot of people don't have that knowledge, so they don't want to kind of use that knowledge to their advantage, right? You can do like rate buy downs, and you can kind of get into houses for a lot less money down. You can probably get almost any seller, maybe not in the luxury market as much, like maybe not in like the 2 million plus market, but you can get a lot of sellers that'll cover closing costs, which could be, you know, $30,000, $40,000, depending on if it's, you know, an expensive house. So you do have some advantages, but it's, you know, overall, it's just people don't really want to buy when the interest rates are where they are. And then you have an issue too, where the rents haven't caught up yet. And that's kind of always been a thing here in Vegas too, where I've always felt like the rents were always like cheaper. It was always cheaper to rent here. And then I think it did kind of catch up, and now it's still lagging behind again. Like, where you have, you know, a lot of properties, you know, that you can rent that are relatively affordable. I mean, dude, renting the house that I had in Lake Las Vegas was a $2 million house, and I was renting it for $6,500.
Dude, that's
so
not bad.
Right. So I mean, the mortgage would have been, you know, right around that number. You know, maybe a little bit less, or you know, because they did buy it when the rates were quite low. But you know, it's it's just an environment where, you know, we're in this weird space, and we just have to kind of see what happens before the election.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, I agree. I'm seeing a lot of weird stuff in the market, but I mean, potentially it's good for business, right? For the credit repair situation.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, you know, we had the, you know, obviously the boom during COVID, and then you saw a lot of these credit repair companies and these people that kind of all of a sudden kind of came out of the woodwork being like, hey, I'm a credit repair expert,
Right.
and they really weren't, and then you saw those people go away after COVID, and I think a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
altogether, I think you have like asterisks on COVID on 2020 and 2021 because I think that it was just so easy for whatever
Right.
reason to make money online.
Yeah.
Combination of, we weren't feeling the effects from, not working yet.
Right.
Stimulus was coming in.
Right.
Everyone was
Pre-inflation.
everyone was on unemployment. Right. Inflation wasn't kind of hurting us as bad yet in reality. So.
Yeah.
And I can definitely feel, there's a lot more money objections than there
Right.
have been, in the previous years. But yeah, we're really excited. What I've been building for the last 12 months is basically I had to rebuild my entire company because the things that weren't working long term, right? Our model is all about bringing people through the life cycle of, helping them with their credit, getting them back into the 700s, getting them into a position where they're lendable,
Right.
and then so they can go and execute on their plan
Via
right?
like either Amazon, the FBA situation.
Well, not even necessarily like an automation product with us or something like that, but just for whatever they want to do
Right.
with their own money, right? They want to, go after their startup, or they want to, get a bunch of cash just to have a security blanket, or they do want to invest in some type
Right.
of, income earning opportunity, that they would, be able to do so. But during COVID, a lot of things happened that were hard to foresee, maybe not. And there really isn't anyone could do anything about. We just,
Right.
the whole industry had to adjust.
Right. Everybody.
Because people weren't getting fixed as fast, and everything kind of slowed down. And then you saw it pick up towards the end of the pandemic. And then obviously, but then once it started picking up again, the desire for needing the credit repair stuff, I think the saturation, at least on like the Instagram side, because primarily like that was really my target place where I would get my customers, I think got really saturated in a bad way.
Yeah.
Saturation, normally people think of it as bad, but it's not. You want saturated markets because you want to be able to compete for, a big pool of clients.
Yeah.
I'd much rather compete in a saturated market than one that's unsaturated and have to go find your perfect client, and then you still have to close them.
Yeah,
right?
They don't even know the problem, right? You're
And
like,
so people think, oh, well, it's super saturated. Well, that's not a bad thing. I mean, if you have the best product, you want to be in a saturated market, right?
That's true.
Right? Like your industry even is booming.
Dude, the market is super saturated.
Right. But if you're really talented.
Yeah. I look at it as like no one can really do what I could do.
Right.
So like,
exactly.
yeah.
So, I'm saying, that should be the mentality of people that do compete in these markets, right? Is that, and every big market that has made people rich forever has always been saturated.
Yeah.
Like Bitcoin's super saturated, crypto saturated, stocks are saturated.
Right.
Real estate's super, unbelievably saturated. Cars are saturated. Like, so everything, all the big stuff is saturated. Consulting and sales has always been saturated. But yeah, just been able to really look back and reflect and just kind of be real with the mistakes that we made.
Yeah.
And rebuild my team. I fired /
transition.
People just moved on, into other opportunities. But I only have my original VA from 2020, and then she's the only one left. And at one point we had like 27 people contracted with us. So, going from 27 employees basically to replacing. And I wanted to kind of go back to basics. And I think this is something that I would like to talk about a little bit on the podcast.
Please.
Is just the basics of entrepreneurship, and really a lot of people, ignore the fundamentals. Right. And you have, you can argue about, the 5 pillars of, the 6, whatever number it is. For me, it's mostly leadership, sales, marketing, systems and operations. And then, there's a couple other kind of ancillary ones.
Yeah, but that's like your core. Like that's what you need for sure. That's so just to touch base on that. I'll let you keep going because I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say.
Yeah.
But based on like the cycle of the market, people that I've talked to, and all the clients we've had, our current state of affairs is very similar. Like, we contracted I had 2 clients that went bankrupt this year. Didn't make it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the market's up and down, and you have to be able to weather the storm and contract and expand as needed. But I love that, like, getting back to basics, because that's kind of what we did too. Is like what we're good at, the photo, video stuff. Like, just cut back. Let's do the basics. Shed what we don't need, and just focus on the basics. You know what I mean?
Well, the basics are what's going to keep the lights on, and that's and entrepreneurship is different than other games, because other games, like, you don't want to play the same level of Mario every day, right? You want to get to the next level, but entrepreneurship works in such a weird way where there's such a compound effect where it's just about staying alive and staying in the game. Yeah. It's more of like a capture the flag, like last man standing type of situation.
That's
where
what it is.
You want to be able to just stay alive and stay in the game, because there is this unbelievable compound effect where you can not see like success show up in your life and show up on paper, whether it's dollars or whatever, network, whatever. And then all of a sudden,
boom,
next year, right, you make more money next year than you do in the previous, 4 years.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot in entrepreneurship. Did some light just go up?
That's fine. Hold on, fuck, bro, technical difficulty, cut.
That's fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal. All right, sorry. Continue.
No, you're good. Yeah, so I lost my train of thought. But yeah.
You're on a great staying alive. I mean, that's
staying in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so staying in the game, man. Yeah. It's just different than other than other opportunities and other types of games, if you want to call them games, right? Or industry, whatever, right?
I mean, some seasons of businesses, that's what it is. It is a success. I was just talking with someone that it is a success staying alive. Like, there are other companies that didn't make it, and that's like what you're saying about entrepreneurship is you have to be able to stay alive. There's some seasons where, hey, we made it, whew. But I love what you're saying is about, it's like built-in equity. Like, it expands exponentially just by you staying alive, because you're still the credit guy. Like, you know what I mean? You're still that guy. Like, I'm still the videographer. People think of video.
And that brand equity also you can see that last. Like, people do still recognize the brand, and they still do recognize, like, okay, this guy is not just like some random dude in his mom's basement trying to make trying to make $5K a month, fixing people's credit. That's not, what we ever strive to be. And then I think also, like, credit repair was also something for me where it was kind of like the boss. It was like the boss that I could kind of never beat, in the sense of we never maximized our potential with it, in the sense of helping and reaching enough people. We built all these systems to be able to handle, like, massive volume. And then by the time the systems were built and were ready to be executed, we couldn't acquire the volume of customers that we wanted to. And so it's always kind of been like, this kind of, pinch in my back that I've always kind of wanted to kind of go back and fix, and now I have a great team. I have a tech guy. That was like the first thing the biggest mistake that I made that kind of caused, I guess, somewhat of a downfall for us, was I just wasn't organized on the system side. And there's just a ton of leakage in the business, and that leakage doesn't matter as much when you're making tons of margin and tons of money, right? And everything's good. But when things are going not quite as good, or things are down, that leakage does show up. That leakage could be the difference between you having a profitable month and not. So, right, even if we're talking about, at the peak, I think, we were doing somewhere in the 200,000 plus range of revenue per month, and then dope. At the bottom, right, maybe we were back down to like 50 to 75. And I think that, again, that leakage, if my overhead, say my cost is 50, right, and I'm making 50, I'm not making money,
right? Yeah.
And so, that leakage could be, $25,000 to $40,000. In reality, when you're making 200 plus, it doesn't show up as much. It doesn't hurt you as much. But so I really, when I rebuilt what I have now, I just rebuilt it properly, and we're still building it. And it's this is what I actually like to do. I mean, that's really what I love is kind of getting that second chance where you're like, okay, I had this great run. We did this. It was successful all in all. But obviously I made a lot of mistakes because that's entrepreneurship. You're learning on the job.
Right. It's just an experiment.
Yeah.
So similar journey. I feel like I don't know if you're talking about your 2023, but that's kind of how it went with us is
22 and 3 for
yeah,
me.
Same.
Yeah.
So 22, we did a ton of volume. Like, I mean, I'm at a way smaller scale. Like, right, like our peak months were like 75,000, and then we fell also all the way up until the end of 2022, 2023, and then 2023 was just a decline. So we built these systems to be able to take on that type of volume, and then clients started falling off, so we had to contract and same leakage, right? Like paying for overhead, contractors not doing everything they're supposed to, like kind of just milking the clock or riding it out. And also for me, I felt like I know these people, like, right, we had 11 staff members at one point, and like all their families depended on it, whatever, right? So you feel bad, like, dude, I don't want to cut this. So I let that go on way longer than I should have to be able
Me
to,
too.
you know what I mean? Just because you feel bad until it got to the point where it was like, dude, I literally can't do it. It's like if I have to choose between my bills and your bills, like it's just the law of the land, but... and then so now again made a ton of mistakes, experienced it, but I was able to like shed everything, start up with my core team again, and be able to be super lean and nimble and get profits up again and operate again at a small scale, but like back to basics. And it sometimes you just got to strip it to get it up again.
Yeah, and I totally get it, and I think that it's important that you have that experience because it's like you said, you're getting kind of a second chance at the same thing.
And you stayed alive.
And you stayed alive. Well, to some degree. I mean, even filing for bankruptcy technically is staying alive. I mean, you're always like, even if you're temporarily out of the game, you can just get back in.
Yeah.
So it's not like, even like bankruptcy is kind of like, that is like a cheat code almost, where it's where it does. Bankruptcy is like where I've gotten just way too over leveraged, extended, and this just seems like a better option. I mean, and it's a whole nother thing. Most people don't file bankruptcy for the right reasons anyway. Like bankruptcy is really for asset protection, not for like small personal debt.
So I wanted to talk to you about that, and this is something that I've been considering because, so what happened with us is all our clients were all over the United States. We traveled a ton, right? So our travel expenses it's built into the contract that they're supposed to pay for their travel expenses at the end of the month or whatever. Again, being cool, I was like, hey, when you get back to it. And I paid for everything on the company cards, right? The credit cards. And so then accounts start falling off left and right, and they didn't take care of their travel expense. So now I'm left with like, it's not a ton. It's like 20, 30 grand in debt. But when when things get tight, that's the difference between this payment or that payment. So it's like, do you file bankruptcy on the LLC, let that one go and start over again? It's like, that's the cheat code.
Well, no, that's not the cheat code. The cheat code is like, the cheat code for bankruptcy would be like, like kind of like a higher level what Trump does, where it's like, he buys some like piece of shit building, and then like, but it's still worth a few $100 million. He gets a loan on it. He defaults on the loan, but then he somehow, is able to retain. He's somehow able to retain the property,
right.
through like a bankruptcy type of litigation. And obviously that's high level, and I'm not claiming to know about that high level corporate bankruptcy stuff, but bankruptcy is really for asset protection. So like for instance, like if you bought like a home like I did in 2021, and you want to keep your home when you have all these bills, bankruptcy could serve as a asset protection if people are coming after your property. Now, luckily we live in a state, Nevada, we have homestead law here, which means that you can file a homestead, and basically $500,000 or $600,000 of equity in your house, if there is equity, is protected. So like creditors can't come after you for personal debt or business debt that you've personally guaranteed, and they can't force the sale of your house if you have homestead law filed.
Oh, dope.
So if you own a home and you do have a bunch of equity in it, you definitely do want to file a homestead in Nevada, and that's
Is that like something you should do, like whether things are going good or bad?
Oh,
or?
absolutely, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like it costs you like $60.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, you just go down to the county recorder's office and fill out the paperwork, and yeah, for sure. Super simple, and yeah, so I obviously did that, and I owe a bunch of creditors money, and stuff like that, but they can't come after me in the sense of like I have to worry about my house getting like
right.
foreclosed on or something or short sold.
Right.
So yeah, asset protection. Bankruptcy should be used for that, not to absolve 20 or 30K of debt. Credit repair is really what.
It's like what you would want to go in.
That's
that
what you would want to do. Yeah, and you want to stay away from debt settlement too, because
really.
Yeah, because debt settlement, it's kind of like this, right? If you had a bunch of people that owed you money, if you owed a bunch of people money, right? And they were asking you for the money, but they weren't suing you yet. Like, why would you pay them preemptively when you really can't afford to pay them, right? So debt settlement kind of tricks people into this illusion of that they have, it does make things simpler. So there is that argument. And sometimes for people that are a little bit lower intelligence, they don't want to have to pay 7 different bills every month, and consolidating that into one payment and, whatever makes them feel like
safe.
Yeah. Like it makes it like, okay, I'm good, like whatever. But a lot of people also just don't know that 90% of the time, I don't know what percentage, but a large percentage of the time, like nothing's going to happen. Like, right. Like if you genuinely, you're not, we're talking about people that genuinely like can't pay their bills, not people committing fraud. Right. Like, because obviously you have that side of it too, where like you have these people that, they get a bunch of funding, but they like purposely know that they're not going to pay it back. But
that's like at a different level.
It's a different, fraud is about intent. That's a totally different situation. These are like, just regular,
right.
blue collar, corporate people that work 9 to 5s and they have fixed income and their credit card bills got out of debt for whatever reason and they're looking for an out. Credit repair is the best option because debt settlement's gonna mess your credit up even if your credit's not messed up yet. Like, so if you just have high utilization and you don't have any negative remarks on your credit, debt settlement can affect those accounts that are in good standing. It doesn't necessarily mean it will, but it can. Most of the time, I would say it will affect it. So you are going to have credit issues anyway. So it is important to kind of go the credit repair route for the reason, like I just said. Why would you pay someone if you're, or especially in the case if you're already defaulting on something or something's already charged off, already have a collection? Why would you pay them if they're not like forcing you to pay them?
So
right?
So what would be like the natural like progression of things? It's like all right, let's say your credit card gets out of hand, then you start like not being able to make the payments, and then you just are like, all right, well I can't make the payments.
Right.
Is that when you reach out to credit repair or like?
Yeah, I mean that would be a good time to reach out. Basically, you would let that account go. We call it letting it go, and then eventually after usually 150 days, it'll be put into charge-off status. Some companies don't do that and they keep the debt. Like American Express is notorious for
they keep the debt.
They're private, so they sue everybody. So even if you owe them like 15 grand, like 30 grand, they're gonna sue you for it.
So what does that look like? They just send a letter like
someone just serves you and then you just have to respond and then you negotiate and you settle.
Oh, okay.
Right? And then whatever that looks like, right? Now, I will say American Express does also have they also do have an awesome payment like a financial relief program where I've actually seen this as a play where some people take advantage of this, where they like will manufacture spend or like get their like platinum cards up to like $200,000 spend limits, and then basically they'll call American Express and be like, hey, I need financial relief, and they put them on like. I forget. It's a very good plan. I think you end up paying like 3% a year in interest.
Oh wow! Which on 200 grand.
Yeah, which is a pretty sweet loan. Because with the platinum card, you have to pay it back every other cycle.
Yeah.
So I've seen some people actually do that as a play. Not recommending that. That's obviously like probably not legal. Not condoning it or recommending it, but I have seen people kind of run that as a play where they're like, I'm gonna get 3 of my buddies to go, we're gonna all get our Amexes up to 100,000, 200,000 and spend, max them out, pull 600K off them, 500K off them, and then we're gonna call Amex and get into the financial relief program. They'll make you pay like a monthly payment, I think.
Yeah.
Which won't be small, but I think you'll end up paying only like 3% a year on interest, which is nuts. So that being said, most companies don't sue you though.
I see.
And these companies, and just in my experience, again, this is just anecdotal. This isn't, legal advice or anything like that.
Right.
Not financial advice, but most companies won't sue you. And so the debt gets charged off, they write the debt off, and then they sell the debt to a third-party debt collector, where then you would have a collection show up on your report. Those people are going to try to collect the debt from you, and you have no obligation to pay them because you never signed a contract with them.
Right.
They just bought the debt from the creditor, and then, they're going to try to say that they're entitled to it, but they're not. And then that's kind of where credit repair is powerful, because now you are actually, not only are you removing the negative remark from the report, the original account, and maybe the collection. So you could have two negatives from that one account, right? Because once they sell the debt to the collection company, that collection company is going to report it. Exactly. Right. So now you have two negative accounts for them from that original one account that's negative. But now credit repair, not only by removing the collection and the original account from the report, you also probably won't have to pay the money. So credit repair can have a debt settlement or a debt relief type of
like benefit
symptom. Yeah, like kind of like a symptom of it, or like a response from it. It's not necessarily the goal of credit. Like we tell people, like, hey, look, we're just removing stuff off your report, through legal methods, right? We're not. This doesn't mean you don't owe the money, right? But just in reality,
it's not
in that situation, someone probably would never have to pay the money back. I mean, I've had it happen to me when I've told this story before, but when I and life was kind of just in shambles, but I was like in really good shape at the time. Like I was super still into fitness.
What year was this?
2016.
And you were 26? Oh, we're the same age.
Yeah, 33.
Yeah, 33.
1990.
Yeah.
So, I was I had gotten out of a bad relationship and was kind of just a little kind of lost. Didn't know what I wanted to do. And me and my dad decided to move to Vegas just on a whim. I'd never been here before, never visited. Whatever.
From where were you from?
From New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so far away. So then, basically, long story short is I knew nothing about credit, right? I mean, and even coming from, I would say, middle to upper middle class family. I grew up in a really wealthy place called Hastings on Hudson. One of the richest, highest tax places in the country. A lot of my friends, I was probably in the bottom 1% of familial wealth, right? All my friends, most of my friends have really serious familial wealth. Their dads, and then their dads
Goldman
are
Sachs.
lawyers. No, seriously, lawyers, doctors, stockbrokers. Really good culture though. Not flashy money. Drive Subarus and Hondas and maybe some BMWs here and there. But East Coast money is a lot different than West Coast money.
Yeah.
The way that it's shown in public, but just really good culture and happy to really grateful that I kind of grew up in that environment. But anyway, I'm just saying that because even with growing up in that type of environment and having parents that weren't great with money, but they weren't bad per se. Well, my dad's pretty bad, but shout out to my dad. My mom has always been pretty fiscally responsible and had excellent credit, but they never taught me shit. And that just shows you it's not just because a lot of this is a lot of the people that I talk to. I mean, 80% of the people I deal with are minorities, right? They're black or Mexican, right? Hispanic, whatever, and they often blame the system, right? And they're not wrong for that, but they often blame the system for not understanding about learning about credit and finance. But this is something that affects even people.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, even people in that come from wealthy places. Their parents, and listen, you can't blame them because the logic is, not to go off on a huge tangent here, but the logic is that model made sense for our parents because my parents are in their 70s. So they were born in my mom's born in 1951, my dad's 50.
Right.
You know, both my parents went to college, right? Not right after high school, but they eventually both went to college. They both have advanced degrees. But going to college back then was technically the right move because it was an opportunity where you were able to go to college, get a job, buy a house, raise a family. Like that was the blueprint, and that blueprint worked.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for us to like, you know, blame them for kind of that because and then they're so my point is that they were it would give you the life, the American dream, the life that, you know, everyone wanted when the American dream was still alive back in the
back then.
back in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s and early 2000s. You know, why would you take massive risk to go do entrepreneurship, right? So it made sense for them. But for us, you know, it doesn't make as much sense because we understand that, you know, getting into that level of debt and going through that doesn't necessarily guarantee us the American dream.
Right.
And so it's just a totally different opportunity cost for us, whether we decide to do that or to go into business.
Right.
So circling back on the original kind of where we were talking about my origin story. So the point was when we moved out to Vegas, I had barely any money. And my credit, I had one credit card with like a $500 limit. My original plan before I had decided to move was that I was going to open up a gym in
Vegas or
no in New York.
Okay.
I was doing personal training and coaching. And for those that don't know, I used to be like an avid bodybuilder. I never competed officially, but I was like a gym rat. I spent like hours a day in the gym. I was pretty jacked I considered myself natural. I had messed around with some steroids when I was 19, but I hadn't, you know, done any. It was a short-lived experiment, and then I had been natural ever since. So I was, you know, pretty intertwined into the natural bodybuilding scene, and I coached, you know, a couple kids, you know, for their shows and whatnot. So I was well known in my town, my small town, of, you know, kind of being like a fitness person and being someone who knew a lot about fitness and nutrition and things like that. So I was planning on opening a gym somewhere in my area and coaching people, but it really it was kind of more of a pipe dream. I didn't know anything. And I had gone to my bank, and again, I know nothing about credit, and I had asked them if I could get like a credit card or apply for a loan, for a business loan or whatever. And again, I know nothing. I don't even have like an LLC formed. I'm like a sole prop, right? So I'm a total noob. And they're like, okay, fill this out. I'm like, okay, fill it out. And again, my highest limit's $500, right?
Yeah.
So whatever. So then, you know, fast forward a few weeks later, me and my dad decided to move on a whim. We had a conversation on the phone. We left 10 days later.
Wow.
And then the first night that we stay in Pennsylvania, we stopped in Pennsylvania, you know, because we had driven for a bunch of hours. I stop in the hotel. The bank calls me. I completely forgot I had even applied for this thing, right? The bank calls me. I completely forgot. Totally forgot that I had applied. TD Bank, actually. Shout out to TD Bank. And they call me and they say, yeah, we just want to let you know that we approved you for your credit card. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. How much was it for? And they're like, I don't have that information here, sir. If you log into your app, like, it'll show your credit limit. And so I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like, I just, you know, I probably got like another $500 or something, right? So I log into my app and $7,500.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. And you got to understand, right? Like, I'm moving across the country with my dad. My dad's got like $3,000 in cash and maybe $5,000 in credit cards, and I have like $1,000 in cash and $500 in credit cards. The end of the story is that we lived off that credit card for like the next like 6 months in Vegas before we got jobs, and basically were able to like pay for our living. And I ended up charging off that credit card because I wasn't able to pay it back, and then nothing ever happened. I never had to pay the money back. So, I mean, it just shows you, like, you know, and again, there was no, like, fraudulent intent there, right?
Right.
It was it was just, right, this was way before I even got into credit. And then that was, like, the first thing that
And you didn't file, like, bankruptcy or anything?
No. And that was the original first, like, kind of, partly the first reason why I was interested in credit and stuff is because I was like, well, I just like used this card and like spent $7,500 on it, and over like, you know, the course of, say, probably didn't get charged off till the following years, just say a year, and you know, and actually no, it was longer than that. It was probably 2 years, and nothing negative happened.
That's crazy. So
right.
In 2013, I opened up my first business. It was called Truck Mount Garage. I didn't know anything about anything either. I was 23, so dipshit, right? I was like, I could do business.
Yeah.
So my dad worked as a mechanic for this carpet cleaning company. They agreed to like use us as a third-party vendor or whatever. He would take his salary, it wouldn't be taxed anymore, and there would be our first account. So I was like, cool. So me, again, not knowing shit about business, first LLC, whatever, start getting little credit cards, 2,000, 1,500, as many as I could. And then I got a new truck, just like leveraged everything I could. And then it just ended up failing. And like with the car and like everything, it was like 80 grand, 100 grand in debt or something. And I filed bankruptcy. I didn't know what else to do because literally the business didn't work out. I didn't know what to do. I filed bankruptcy and I paid like a lawyer like $1,300 and just boom, like all my mistakes were washed away. And again, that wasn't the intent. I was like legit trying to make this work. But
well, that's not, again, you were young enough where, you know, because you could only file bankruptcy every 8 years, I believe, or something like that. You can only do it, I think, 3 or 4 times in your life. So there's a limitation. But like, think about it. If it's, you know, file bankruptcy and you got to wait 8 years, like you're probably not going to have to file more than 4 times, hopefully anyway, whatever it is, 3 or 4 times. So yeah, I mean, you were kind of at that right age where, you know, by the time, you know, you could kind of get things corrected, you'd be in your late 20s, and then obviously now you're at that threshold again, like, where if something happened, you could file again. And listen, there are a lot of people that literally structure like their entire kind of strategies around this stuff, and it's again, and it's not, you know, again, is it, you know, it's kind of gray area, whatever, you know, it's a little bit, you know, ethically questionable, you know, I don't really get into that stuff, but you know, it works. I mean, it's crazy. It's our country is built on that system. But that system is also, it's also, people would think like, oh, it's a predatory and it's like terrible system, but it's actually what makes America like the best, because no other country can you get access to capital like you can in this country.
Right.
And that's what makes this country so great when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Because we're able to give our entrepreneurs more resources than any other country, and the way that our business laws are structured and things like that. So, you know, entrepreneurship in America, you know, it you know, again, the American dream is dead, you know, unfortunately.
That literally says, in the dream we trust. Yeah. You're telling me there's no dream left?
Well, I mean, I think the dream is dead, and unfortunately it's dead. Yeah, sorry, I'm taking my little shoes
No,
off.
you're good. It's off the frame.
The dream is a little dead.
Well, you got to create your own dream. That's kind of like how I look, is like, as you create your own dream, and that's what I trust in. Is I trust in my ability to create my own dream and my own desire, and like anything outside of that is somebody else trying to sell you their dream. Like, you know, you're either working for yourself and creating your own dream, or you're working for somebody else's dream. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like, but that's kind of like the options that you're given.
Yeah, I think that the 9 to 5, we can talk about this too, kind of from a macro standpoint, the whole kind of like 9 to 5 versus entrepreneurship. And listen, I think that a lot of people are not, I think that we as entrepreneurs, we get numb to the shit that we deal with, and that we expect that like every other human to be able to like handle that type of stress.
Right.
And that's what makes us special, in the sense of like, if you are an entrepreneur and you are able to be successful and stay in business and do the things that you're doing and make money for years on end, and you've kind of proven this track record that you are competent in what you do, then, you know, that's that's not something that is just an easy thing that just is kind of how everyone happens. It's, it happens to everybody. It's the opposite for most people, right? So I think, and obviously we need workers for leverage. So we also, it's kind of hypocritical for us to shit on
right
9-to-5ers, but then also expect us to hire those same people in our business and to give them, have them give their all, into our business, because they are the difference between, making it at scale and, just kind of working in a job that you own the business, right? That's a big difference too, right? Where, and there's both ways are fine, but to run an actual business, like when I consider someone running like a real business, they're not running, they're not working in the business, right? So, and I was at that point for quite some time, for at least a little bit of time in 2021, where I didn't really have to do much. And, I was still probably doing some fulfillment, whatever. And I was probably like 80% there. And it's pretty amazing. That's a pretty liberating and amazing accomplishment in itself, getting 80% there, where I just had to, I was like probably 2 hires away from being literally 100% removed, and, didn't have to, I could just sleep all day. I didn't, but I'm just saying, I actually had a bunch of health issues pop up in 2020, late 2020 and early 2021, where I wasn't working a lot anyway, because I was having I had this weird spout of dizziness that was just chronic, and it wasn't like a vertigo type dizziness. It was just like this weird kind of felt like I was always standing and walking in sand. It was very strange.
What? Did you go to the doctor or anything?
I did. They diagnosed it, they didn't really know what was wrong. They diagnosed it as basically both me just being overweight, and then obviously I have, I was having palpitations, heart palpitations, stuff like that. So they had put me on a beta blocker, which is, it lowers your blood pressure, lowers your palpitations, the amount of palpitations you have, whatever. And it didn't really help. It didn't help a bunch. And I think it was stress related.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's crazy what stress and these other things can do to your body. Especially someone like me, where I've had worse scenarios where stress manifests just into physical ailments, for a lot of people. And
100%.
But yeah, no, it was awesome to kind of almost be at that point where I didn't have to do much, and the business was running, and we were making tons of money, and things were good. But I think that a lot of people, have to work in their business for it to survive. And I think that now that I'm rebuilding my business again, it's another opportunity to build the systems and the structures now to know that I don't want to have to work in my business if I don't want to.
Yeah. So I have a question so it's crazy how like similar, parallel, my story is, to what you're telling me, because so I broke my wrist in like April or May of this year. Same thing. I didn't work for like 4 or 5 months.
You know what's funny you say that? Is that I broke my wrist that's in May of that year as well, in 2021.
Oh wow!
But it was my right wrist. I got mad and I punched a door like an idiot, and I got a boxer's fracture.
Oh man!
And yeah, I broke my wrist. So that was kind of like, bro, that was like the camel that broke the straw's back, like or the straw that broke the camel's back, whatever the saying is. Like I literally. That was the dumbest thing. I punched a solid core door like an idiot. I had a boxer's fracture, and then I was just kind of getting like healthy again and feeling better. And then that happens, and then I'm like, yeah, I can't use a computer for like. And so what ended up happening is I went in, I got full casted and everything, and then I ended up cutting off my. Basically down to your whole hand.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you broke your wrist.
Shit. Yeah, I had my whole shit.
Yeah, technically I broke my hand, you broke your wrist.
Yeah.
But it's technically the same casting.
Yeah.
And it's fucking awful.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And I won't say this on podcast, but there was another reason I'll give you guys a little bit of imagination. Put it this way: I was very fat. I'm not as fat as I am now. I'm saying I'm less fat now than I was then. But actually, is that true? No, I was probably about the same. But regardless, there was something that I couldn't do with my left hand that I could only do with my right hand. So that was the other reason why I had to cut off my cast.
Oh shit. Well, so
literally shit. Like yeah.
Damn. Well, fucking, I forgot where I was going now. Oh, so this was the question I was gonna ask you. So
yeah, sorry.
So
I totally went
took
off
there. 4 or 5 months from my business. Again, things were cranking. Everything was good. Staff is good. Money's coming in. No real issues. But I removed myself. Yeah, damn near completely. Like I stopped showing up for the calls. I didn't have to do anything. And my guys, I'm so grateful for. Now rebuilding it, I feel like how much I took them for granted. Like how much they did. But do you think so what I feel like one of my big lessons I took away was when you get to the point that you can remove yourself from the business, what I think is you should still input that amount of energy onto the business just in a different direction, just somewhere else. Because what I think is because I took the pulse off, for me, if I could pinpoint the thing that happened was I stopped doing sales and marketing. So I stopped bringing in new accounts. And so, because I thought we were good, I'm like, well, bro, 75, 80 grand a month, we're solid. It's going to be a great year. Don't have to sell anymore, which was a terrible mistake. And then everything just started falling off. My arm was broken, whatever. I was like, we're still cool. We'll survive. And I took my attention and intention off the business, which I feel like was part of its demise that, reset us. So do you feel like, what do you think your approach would be is when you're able to fully remove yourself from the business, is it good to just walk away and leave it, maybe put a CEO in place or whatever, or continue to keep pushing it?
Well, that's really when business starts to get fun. I think that you should look at it as you're kind of doing the brute work to get, you should be doing the brute work to get to that point. That should kind of be the business owner's goal, to get to that point where at least the revenue generating part of your company is automated, because the revenue generating part and the fulfillment that is, the fulfillment that those people are paying for is automated, because now is really when being an entrepreneur, now is when you're separating, being, say, some average entrepreneur, which again, average entrepreneurs can still make millions of dollars. Right. But you're separating, real talent from average talent, basically, or average business owners or average operators, where, and some people aren't great operators. I'll be honest, I don't really love operating. Either. I'm more, and I'm more of a vision guy, and I'm more of an idea guy. And I'm more of a strategy type of person, but I also know that I also have the humility that I need to learn and get better at operating if I really want to make this, for the next 20, 30 years and be an entrepreneur for the rest of my life. You have to, again, back to the fundamentals, right?
Get back to the
stuff that people don't want to do, right? Learning the intricacies of CRMs, right? And how they work and how automations work and how they keep you organized. Again, leakage is such a big problem in every business. That study came out of Harvard, I think, where it was if you don't call the lead within 5 minutes, you lose, 80% chance of closing it or something, right? You only have a 50% chance of closing it anyway, and then it goes down to 80% of that 50% or something like that. So, having these types of systems in place where you're able to in real time just have your team dialed in and you're executing on good data and making good decisions. But again, getting out of the business is a good experiment, but it's almost like you got to really watch it.
You have to.
You got to watch it like you're building some type of bomb or something. Because, Because if one thing goes wrong,
then all of a sudden
it could be okay, and then if you don't fix it right away or nip it in the bud or you don't catch it,
it'll leak.
It can leak. It'll be a huge problem. It'll snowball. So that's when business gets fun. It's when you have closers, setters, operations systems in place, at least at some base level. And even getting it to the base level it's still not easy, because you still have to talk about, employing or contracting a good 4 to 6 people to get to that point, even at very low levels. Even if you have one person for customer service, one appointment setter, one closer, one tech guy, right? And then if you're removing yourself from operations, now you have to have someone for ops.
Yeah.
So right there, you're at like 5 or 6 people.
Yeah. So for us, like I fully built out the operations, like 2 editors, 3 videographers, 2 graphic designers, social media managers. Fully, like, ops was like dialed in. They were killing it. And then right before I broke my wrist, I was like this close to automating the sales process. I had like a setter, and then the leads were coming in, and I was just the closer. I was closing everything. And then broke my wrist, and I was like, whatever, fuck it, we'll be all right. And then that's where, like, that's what the piece that was missing, that I was like, oh man. So I'm still like, now I have a really dope acquisition model still, same, like, leads come in, and I'm like doing the sales calls right now, but again, rebuilding. And then my ops teams, now I just have like my 3 core guys and gals, and they're like handling everything. And then I kept great relationships with all my like former guys, so I still like contract them out on a gig base, like, hey, this came in, you want to handle it, whatever. So everybody knows, kind of understood the situation, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, just like you said, getting back to the basics, you got to master the basics. That's what all the masters do.
Yeah, man, operations is tough. Like, it's just, again, like, I can't stress it enough, but just, again, learning the fundamentals is what it's all about. If you can master the fundamentals, then you're not going to have a problem making money.
Right.
So that's a huge thing. And I want to kind of turn back here. I am a big personal brand person, because I think that for a lot of people, they just want to be able to make and I think that a lot of people can make that amount of money. But I think that we also ignore how big the gap is between someone who can make 10 or 20 grand a month through a personal brand, through working in that brand every day, right? And I've seen guys who run personal brands that have made a lot more money than that, even like someone like myself. But the problem with relying on your personal brand is that, one, it makes you unable to exit your company. You'll never be able to exit your company if you only rely on personal brand.
Because then they want JDM.
They want, you are the company. Yeah. Right? So again, that's a huge issue. So you're never going to get like a multiplier or as big of a multiplier on a company if you try to sell it, if you're the brand or the personal brand of the company. And then secondly, again, you're going to be working in your business. And if that's what you love to do, and that's what you want to wake up and you're driven to do, then all the power. Still need to have, you're never going to crack more than 3 million. I think that in the right business, in the right situation, someone that's working kind of like you have systems, maybe a couple other people on your team, a bunch of good partners, you could do 3 million in revenue. You're never going to get past 3.
Yeah.
Like around 3. Like you're never going to get to 8 figures ever by yourself. So again, it's just about what you want. 3 million, if you're operating slim, that could mean you taking home 50%.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, that might be enough for you. And then obviously, with what you're doing with the money, if you're investing it properly, or you get lucky, you bought Bitcoin or you bought some shit coin and you rode it out to the top. Works, yeah. I mean, well, the other thing too is that, like, we talk about money a lot. Money is a metric of success.
That's what I tell people.
And
it's a scorecard.
It's just, it's one scorecard.
That is true.
It's not the only one. And I think it's important to talk about that, because a lot of people only think in dollars.
Yeah.
So if some 17-year-old kid and his buddies are, in some crypto Discord, and they think some coin is going to fucking moon, and they all throw in a few grand and the thing fucking moons, and they all make a few $100,000, and then they take that money and they do it again at scale with another coin, and now they're millionaires. That's happened a lot over the last few years, right? Where, guys that regular dudes or smart, nerdy kids, whatever. They've gotten, they've made some good wins. Does that mean that these people know shit about business?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
They know nothing about they understand crypto,
right.
but they know nothing about running a business or
right.
So you could have a business owner that makes $150K a year, but he's been doing it for 20 years.
Right.
That guy knows infinitely more about business than some guy who's worth millions. So money is not always the best indicator of money in general, because again, you don't know how they got it.
Right.
You don't know if they inherited. You don't know if there was a lot of nepotism involved, where say you're starting your videography company and I give you some client that pays you $1 million a month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or whatever. Or so, and that's a little bit of exaggeration. But say they're paying you $50K a month. Right? For you to follow some guy around, right? Some hotshot rapper, YouTuber, whatever, right? I mean, shit like that happens. So the context matters, and it's important that, again, business for me is about that compound effect, that knowing that I'm staying in the game, that if I just stay in the game long enough, eventually, my income is just gonna skyrocket.
Exponential, yeah.
Right, when that opportunity arises, where now it's not about the little wins per se, because eventually I know that because of my network growing and the things that I'm doing, and again, practicing the fundamentals, getting better at the fundamentals, all these things give you leverage too.
Yeah.
So when you're growing your network and you're in the game, you have more to offer to everybody, not to people that are below you, at your level, above you. And people want, I like to tell people like this: if you're weird, because I'm this kind of silly person, in my, in normal day-to-day life, I'm kind of this silly kind of type of guy where, I'm funny, and I'm just kind of living life carefree, but at the same time, I'm also this serious business person. But the paradox, is that most people don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they really just spew half truths.
Yeah.
And the way that stuff's rewarded because of social media and the algorithms, and I want to, I'm on this podcast, so I'm going to say something outrageous so I can get a clip. Right. So that, and then that's rewarded by the algorithm. Right. And that's basically how Andrew Tate got famous.
Yeah.
Or got super famous. I mean, it's funny, a lot of people on Money Twitter, if you don't know, there's this group of people on Twitter that it's called Money Twitter, where it's these OG guys that kind of were the original kind of grind, hustle, mentality type guys, sharing, these esoteric, hacks and, whatever, kind of esoteric type business guys, the misfits, right? You could call them. And Andrew Tate was kind of adjacent there. We all knew about him back in 2015, 2016, but he just wasn't as, popular as obviously he eventually became. But that same model where it's you say something that's a little bit controversial but probably true, and then you just nail it at the end with something crazy. Right? And then you clip it, and then it goes viral, right? And so, but again, the algorithms don't really give you that they don't give you that result that you're looking for with this type of content, with long form content, which is really what people should be consuming. If you are going to consume content, the long form content is going to be much more valuable, because you're going to get to actually know the character of somebody and know who you're going into business with. And that's why I love to do these types of podcasts, because when I want to sell myself to somebody, I don't want to tell them to go to my Instagram and watch me making fun of someone on a reel, or me calling some guy a brokey, or being you're an idiot, right? I want them to consume a longer form content where they understand the way that I actually think about business, and the way that I think about, what I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, it's a crazy world. It's a crazy, business is insane. I mean, it's so fun because every day can be different, and where there's all these different possibilities. We can, things can happen, and we can go this way or that way, and it's just it's awesome. It's stimulating. And I think people like myself who need to be stimulated, I'm an ADD type kid. I was like diagnosed when I was like 11. I was that kid that could never sit still in school, as you can probably see on the podcast. I'm probably fidgeting, like crazy. But business is good for those types of people.
Yeah.
But we need to also dial back that there is a big difference between an Alex Hormozy and a guy who even makes a few $1,000,000. And that difference is bigger than we want to give credits to. Like me and you, like we can laugh and be like we know we'll never be LeBron James, right? Or we'll never even be anybody in the NBA, right? But in some egoic or delusional type of thinking, like I think that I can make as much money or be successful to the level of a guy like Hormozy.
Yeah.
But in reality, I'm probably way farther away than I really think.
Have you read his books? Like I love
I haven't.
story.
I haven't read his books front to back.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of copies of his new book because I was going to give it as a Christmas present to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And I'm still going to some people. And but I actually think Hormozy is someone that I resonate with the most, just because of
I like him a lot.
Just because I think that he's one of the few entrepreneurs that really speaks truth, and he understands business so well conceptually and the nuances of it, and most other people do not grasp that. And he's the one guy that's pretty exceptional in all areas. And then we both have the original have the fitness background, which again is kind of like meaningless now because I'm out of shape. But we both kind of had that original, like came from the gym and the fitness stuff and whatever. And now obviously he's built some amazing companies in his main company, and he's just killing it. And he's like a lock to be a billionaire. Like the guy is like, he's worth a few $100 million.
And he's our age too. That's what's crazy. That's what I think of.
But I'm saying, but my point is that I think that he's closer to an NBA player than we want to give credit for.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, I think that like, I don't think in reality that like me and him are that different, but he is that much more talented than me.
Yeah.
And I think that it's humbling, and I think that you have to have that level of humility to understand that there is this huge gap that you're never going to like learn from a book or a mentor, even where the greatest things that humans do, they don't know how they do them. Like it's not communicable. Like Barry Bonds doesn't know how he swings the bat and hits 70 home runs. Michael Jordan can't teach you how to be great. Right. And and again, I think you see these examples everywhere where the people that are truly at the top of the mountain, to get to that level, you're never going to be able to learn that in a book.
So I love that you're taking it in this direction, because that was kind of one of the questions that I was going to circle back on when you were talking about like the esoteric level of business. That's probably my favorite thing to study. Like I read a ton of books. I listen to audiobooks specific in the like Master Key System. I don't know if you're familiar with that YouTube channel. But it's very esoteric, mind power, stuff like that. And like what you're saying, as far as like Michael Jordan and all these people that tap into a level of like what in my mind, how I categorize it is like the infinite subconscious, the infinite intelligence,
flow state,
God, flow state. Yeah. Which when you're able to, and the thing is like, you're not that smart. You can't get there on your own. No matter, you can't force it. You have to almost like,
you have to have this. Well, this is like the conundrum, right? The conundrum is that the guy that read the book, that gives credence to the book, that got him to the next level.
Right.
The thing that he's not understanding is that he already had the DNA to go to the next level. So the book was just the catalyst, but if the DNA is not there, then it doesn't matter. Because think about it like this. There's probably 100,000 self-help books written every year.
Right.
And they're consumed by tens of millions of people.
Right.
And then what's going to happen next year? The same thing.
So that's why I'm very discerning on what I read. I don't read like
right.
Or Hormozy's probably like the newest author that I've read. All the authors I read are pretty old, like from 1940s, 1930s, whatever.
Yeah. They're definitely, listen, and I'm a burn your books type guy, but there definitely are legitimate books and there are legitimate people that can help you in business 100%. But you just have to understand that you still have to go and show up and play the game. And
100%.
that's the thing, is that even if you're an exceptional learner and you're really gifted in all these areas,
Right.
you still have to go and then prove that you can showcase that knowledge
Right.
that you've supposedly, or you think that you've retained.
Right.
You have to be able to go do that in reality and prove it out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do we judge human beings? We judge them by their behavior, not what
Right.
they think. So you could say, well, I don't believe in God, or I don't, do this or that, whatever. But then if you go to church every Sunday and right, and then and you live this like Christian life, right? Like, we're all gonna just be like, yeah, he's a Christian, like, right, like, or like he's a God-fearing man or whatever, right?
Right.
But you could literally be doing all of that, and then literally in your head be like thinking like, I don't believe in any of this. I'm just doing it because it's a sham, or because it's good for my family, right? So there's this. So then what's the real you? Right.
Well, that's what's crazy. I mean, it like, that's a great question. It's like, who are you, right?
Right.
Because you could go deep into that. It's like,
is it what you do, or is it how you think, or is it what you think about,
or is it the consciousness observing the reality, the 3 dimension? Like, so I love studying that like deeper esoteric stuff, as far as like mind powers and what your mind's able to create, like what your thoughts can turn into, what your behaviors could do. Meditation, again, subconscious, like your subconscious never sleeps, like your heart pumps, you breathe air, you're like and that's what I'm trying to master when I like think of self-mastery, is being able to program my own mind into doing the things, like, to like program your subconscious to believe a certain thing, and then it creates the reality in front of you, whether it's like through the law of attraction or whatever you choose to believe in, but creating that reality. Like, someone asked me, like, do you have any hobbies, or what do you do? And I'm like, I just, like, what I do, and I consider a hobby, is like I create my reality around me. And like, that's just what I like to do. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try this, so then I do it. Like, they built this room, like, that was a thought, and it was in my imagination.
So that is a common, like, what you're explaining is a common, I guess, objective or goal for a lot of people, right? And I think that the mistake that a lot of people make, again, I'm not a big advice person. I don't think, because I think advice is just spewed in the wrong way, and it's not applicable across the board. But I have some relationship with you, and I know you a little bit. But I think that when a lot of people are trying to, you said you were trying to program yourself to kind of get to that level. It's actually, for me, I think it's actually more likely that you'll get there by deprogramming. So by undoing the bad conditioning, or not, it's not bad like morally bad. No, you're right.
But it's like your belief system.
Right. Like, there's just so much conditioning that we have as humans that we really need to decondition ourselves
100%.
More so than recondition into other things. It's more so about deconditioning and kind of stripping us down to the raw layer that we were kind of when we were kids.
100%.
Because kids are pure, and like, that's the thing, right? Because they don't have as much behavioral and social and societal conditioning, because they haven't been exposed for as long.
Right.
So
no,
that's why children are generally like joyful and happy. Right.
No, that you're 100% accurate. So, are you familiar with like who Kevin Trudeau is? He's like the guru I choose to follow.
I'm not familiar with him.
So I paid $10,000 for this like seminar, and it was like the idea was like, you said something about DNA, which is pretty interesting that you brought it up. But like, so let's say they say that DNA goes like 7 generations back. So like, if you all the way back from hunting and gathering, like, and fear, like when you saw a tiger, you would be like, fear would be like run or hide, whatever the case is.
Yeah, fight or flight.
Yeah, exactly. So it goes 7 generations deep. And in more recent times, so like, for example, is if, let's say your great-grandfather or something came home early from work, and his wife was cheating on him with a man in a bed or something, and all of a sudden he was like, I will never trust a fucking woman again, or whatever, right? So that preconditioned survival mechanism is burned into his DNA, and it passes down into your father and then the kids and so on. And so this is like DNA survival instincts that is passed down for survival. Like, that's how we're wired as humans. And so there's things like, if you take it from a business perspective, like same thing. Like, your great-grandfather could have started a business. He failed. It was humiliating. It was extremely painful. He programmed it in his DNA at that moment, like, I will never do a business. It's a bad thing. And then he passed it on. And so there's things like that beyond our even preconditioned in our experience that are passed down in our DNA. So I attended this seminar, and the concept of the seminar was to energetically release and clear preconceived survival things that are in you, like energetically, right? It could be esoteric. It could have been like a whole bunch of crap or whatever. But the idea was, I was really stoked on the idea, and I felt like slightly different afterwards. And things have happened for me in my life that have been amazing. Not to credit it to that, but there's like a level of that, like, just to amplify what you're saying.
Yeah,
like
I don't. Yeah, and I can't. When I say that when I was referencing DNA, I wasn't necessarily referencing like
in
what
that
you're
context.
talking about,
Yeah.
right? In the sense, but more so just how you are wired, right? So I don't know. We don't really know. Like, we know that we know that there are emotions and traumas that are passed down.
Right.
Like, I think that's proven, or as proven,
right,
as can be, or right, correlated as can be, whatever. But the DNA of the person, like when I reference that word, I'm talking about in the way that my guru talks about it. His name is Kapil Gupta, and he's not for he's a weird guy. He's not for everybody, and I think he blocked me on Twitter too. But he has this. He is a big. He's like really anti-prescription. Like, he's like totally anti-prescription, and he's
like just any type of drugs.
No. Prescription in the sense of like how to. Like, he's totally anti like guru book, like all that stuff. So
I agree. Yeah.
He really rejects all. I mean, he's anti-drug too, but he rejects all that stuff. And because he thinks that it's mostly nonsense. And that's kind of what I was saying to you, in the sense of, you have this life cycle where you have all these people constantly consuming self-help stuff.
Right.
And, how many of them...
They get stuck
How many of them actually get better?
Yeah, right?
None of them. 99.9% don't ever change. And the point that I'm making, and the point that he's making, is that the greatness doesn't lie in the prescription, it lies in the individual. And yes, can a book like trigger a thought or trigger a mindset that maybe like that can kind of lead into something else? Absolutely. And I think that it'll get you, like, books and prescriptions and coaches and gurus can get you to level 1. And or maybe even level 0 if you're starting at like, and that's the other thing. Just to be able to comprehend basic shit, like right, you have to have some understanding of, like, for instance, you would have to understand English before you could do basic math.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
or like, what even a unit of measurement
right,
is. Like, what's a 1? 2?
Right, exactly. So there is like this meta knowledge, or like this base level knowledge that has to be there before we can even have these types of conversations.
100%.
And I think it's the same thing with DNA and with greatness and with business. You have to have some level that's kind of already gifted to you in some capacity to really be, next level. And some people will disagree with me, and I think that's fair, because I think it's fair in both perspectives, because I think that for someone, they'll be like, well, I just, everyone doubted me, and I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah.
And I eventually, like, I made it. But like, you making it and like your definition of making it, and then someone else's definition of making
totally
it,
different.
It's totally different, right? Yeah. So you're getting to a subjective place.
Well, and that's what life is. It's like, really, it's all subjective. Honestly,
right.
I mean, that's like the level.
Well, truth isn't subjective. Well,
that's right.
And so that's kind of why I govern myself, try to at least, by truth, because there are objective truths. Like, right, like we could talk about like. Just like
everyone has to die.
Well, right. And if you jump in a pool and don't come back up for air, eventually you're gonna die too. Like,
well, yeah, there's what I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but what you would define as an objective truth in my, like, how I would say that is like universal laws or principles. Like there's things like gravity,
Yes.
right? Like same thing. It's like the energy you put in is what you're going to get out. Like, you know, the law of reciprocity, just things that are laws. Like if you do these things, you'll get
that
those
might be
results.
subjective.
So there you go.
Right.
So you know what I mean?
Right. That might be subjective. That might be based more of a belief system. And I think a lot of people, there's a couple of things. So a lot of people confuse discipline with desire, right? Because discipline is really overused in our context, in the sense of like, I'm super disciplined because I do this every single day, and I get up and I do my morning routine, or I go to the gym, or I like execute, right? But if that's what you're choosing to do, and no one's like forcing you to do it, then that's really not discipline. It's more so desire. Like you want to do that. It does take.
So would discipline only be considered like if it's something you don't want to do and you do it?
Yes. That's my logic. That's my logic around discipline, right? Is that discipline really is about, like, when you're a kid and your mom makes you do the dishes and you fucking that was like my thing, right? And I would do the dishes because the negative consequence, though, right? Discipline has to do with a negative consequence. So the negative consequence of me disappointing my mom, or her not seeing the kitchen clean in the morning when she wakes up, you know, was stronger than my desire to not do the dishes. But most people, you know, it's really about desire, and it's really about figuring out what you're going after and why. And a lot of people don't take the time to comprehend and understand that. And then I think back to the truth thing, you know, again, searching truth, you know, seeking truth is a whole different rabbit hole that you can go down into. Right. But again, it shows it is the only thing, like you said, that isn't subjective. So, you know, when you were talking about like, hey, I want to get to everything's subjective. Well, yes and no. Everything is subjective, and there you have objective truths, you have personal truths, and then you have contextual truths. Like where, like, you know, me and my dad had an argument, and like this was true and this was true and this was true. Right. And then you have personal truths, like things that you just know in your core. It's not about belief. Right. Because belief is shit, because belief can be changed very quickly.
Well, belief actually is the existence of that it's not a truth, because you have to believe.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
it's not.
It's not a knowing.
No,
because
it's not.
Have
it's
to
faith,
believe it.
Basically. Belief is faith, basically. And truth is something different than belief. So a lot of people confuse belief with truth, and it's different. Right? They're like, oh, well, I believe this. You know, I believe this to be true. Right? But if you believe it to be true, that's not true.
Yeah, because it's the absence of the knowing. Right. It's like a belief.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
there's a faith component to it, right? It's like you're most likely inclined to that being the correct answer.
Right.
And I think a lot of people just don't operate within these realms. They don't think about this stuff in the right way. And again, it's not good or bad. It just is what it is. But I think that a lot of people, you talk about all these people that have made a lot of money, and you talk about how, you know, you always hear the money doesn't make you happy type thing. You always hear all this stuff about success and whatever. Then you have the Dan Bilzerian, blueprint of success, of what does success for a man look like. Right. And then you have an Elon Musk character, right? What does success look like from a guy like Elon Musk, right? So there's like these different archetypes that men that want to like achieve, right? I much would prefer to be like an Elon than like a Dan Bilzerian, but at the same time, like I can see kind of like an appeal to kind of both, right? In a sense.
Yeah. Well, I think like ultimately, like for me, success comes down to how you want to experience your quality of life. Like really, because like you could be successful with your family. You could be successful financially. You could be successful, you know, operationally, business, or whatever. For me, like how I define, like what even like beyond like the meaning of life and success and everything, it's just, to me, it's quality of life. Like, how do I feel living my life day to day? And if it's fucking sick and I love it and I'm stoked on it, then that's what I want to do.
But do you think that quality of life? So this is the.
But that's subjective.
Well, this is the. Well, it's all right, but it's all subjective. But I'm saying that's all subjective. But the conundrum that I get into when I'm on that line of thought is quality of life just a pleasure chase? Like, is quality of life just the seeking pleasure chase and like that, like facade? Because it's hard to understand. It's hard to, like, you have these moments. We all have these moments that we can look back on and be like, I felt most alive in my life during that moment or that period of time or during that thing I was doing. Or I felt most aligned with who I am at the core while I was doing that X thing, right? And so the question becomes, is quality of life, because technology has improved quality of life tremendously.
Yeah.
Right? So quality of life is like not that hard. Like for me, I don't think quality of life is really that hard to achieve if you want a very simplistic type of life.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, because if you say, like, I guess it's how you define quality of life. Because, like, even the most brokiest person in the United States has toilet water and, like, a roof. And
well, dude, my sister's a perfect example. Shout out to my sister. Love you. My sister, like, she makes, like, 30 grand a year. She's, like, 40. She's, like, 10 years older than me. She's 40 to 43. She makes 30-something grand a year, like, low 30s, right? But she literally, like, saves, like, 35% of her money because she has super low overhead. Her hobbies are basically free. Like, she likes to camp and hike, right? She's like an outdoorsy, like, type person. And, you know, she's not a big consumer. Like, she doesn't watch news or like Portland, and you know she's able to basically eat for free because she works in the produce at her co-op. So you know they throw out all the the old shit or whatever. So like her like
so she's successful.
Her overhead. Well, that's what I'm saying though. It's like her overhead is so like she pays her partner, like they're not married, but I think she pays him like a couple $100 a month for rent. So like she lives they live in his house. He owns it, no mortgage. Like so it's like. Again, her quality of life is higher than mine. Now she doesn't have the luxury stuff.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the luxury quality of life that I have, right? Well, but in a way, her quality of life is much higher than mine because it's just much more simplistic. There's so many less variables.
Yeah.
And as you complicate your life, right? It's the balance of as your quality of life. Because when you and I talk about quality of life, we talk about it in the same way. Where it's like that's going to be the way that we feel when we get there. Because again, more money, more problems, right? Like as you increase your quality of life, you have a maid, a chef, an assistant, like this whole, like all these people kind of, now you're like surrounded by more people. You're surrounded by different energy.
Right.
You're, you have, like, I have like tons of pets. I'm like, I breed cats.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, my cats cause me more stress than probably my business does.
Yeah.
And like if nobody knows that about, but like I have 9 cats and 2 dogs, and like I love what I do, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
There you go. You're a success.
But like when I'm going through that pain, like we just lost an entire litter.
Oh no!
Like it happens quite often when you're breeding exotic cats. But like it's like I have to like bury that pain and bury that like experience and just like show up to work.
Yeah.
Right. And that sucks, right? But at the same time, it's like the upside of being around these like amazing animals for me is like that was always what I wanted when I was a kid. So it's like, be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is with high level success where you do have to really be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And when you're young, you can take more risk. And I think that I made a lot of mistakes when I was making a lot of money, and a lot of people, hey, you're spending too much money, don't buy this, don't buy this. But I wanted to do that because for me, it was always about, I wanted to feel what it was basically like to live like someone who was a lot richer.